I bet by the time Desiree gets here, it'll take a little bit to read all that.
Good morning, everyone.
Gavel.
I love to do that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January 12th, 2023 Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Ragsdale, would you proceed, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Fleming? Here. Mr. McKenna?
Here.
Ms. O'Connell?
Here.
Mr. Coles?
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Here.
Dr. Pritchard?
Here.
Chair Sharp?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. I would like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located at the front right podium if you need them. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendance speaker's card located at the front podiums. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of our DPD staff members located at the left podium. When that agenda item is called, you will be given an opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purposes of maintaining a quorum. I would like to now get approval of our minutes from the last meeting in December. May I please have a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion amongst our board members on the minutes? Any discussions? Any corrections? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. There's no director remarks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ragsdale, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only report that I would like to make is one that our fearless chair usually does, which is the birthdays for the month. And since hers is this month, I'm going to make that announcement. So we wish our chair, Mary Sharp, a happy birthday, and also our friend James Tolles. And so we wish you guys a great month and a happy birthday. So, and with that, I will move on to the procedures of the meeting.
And that was one other birthday. I had one.
Okay.
January the 7th. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Sorry about that.
Let the record show that Mr. Thomas has joined us, and he has a birthday this month as well. So.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Ragsdale.
All right. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent agenda for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After the consent agenda is established and approved, we will move on to the regular agenda. For each case on the regular agenda, the DPD planner will give a presentation. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation and any testimony from others who support the application. The applicant and supporters will be given a total of 10 minutes. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Excuse me. Next, the opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Finally, the applicant will then have a 3-minute rebuttal period under the same rules. Following all the presentations and after all parties have been heard, the chair will ask the board members if they have any additional questions of anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case, enter a motion on the matter, discuss and then vote on the application. If an applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing portion of the case, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional testimony from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and the opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take the final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card. These are available at the front podium. Speaker's cards are not required of applicants since their names are already part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. The board is a supporter of community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We are respectful of the fact that many of you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today, but we ask that your comments please be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try not to be repetitive so as to make the most of your side's 10-minute time allotment. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to silence your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings. I will now move to the consent agenda. With our procedures now explained, I would like to introduce to my right Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read items 1 through 25 as the consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of these items individually, please come forward and give us the item number and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Item number 1 has been withdrawn. Item number 2, case SUP 22-28 in Whitehaven. The request is a special use permit for a bar at 1482 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 3, case MJR 22-56 in Whitehaven. The request is a major modification to add 15 feet to the height of an existing CMCS tower at 4723 Elvis Presley Boulevard. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 4, case S22-42 in Raleigh. The request is a 50-lot single-family attached subdivision at the parcel north of 4950 Stage Road. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 5, case S22-43 in Sea Isle. The request is a 2-lot major residential subdivision at 1190 Haney Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 8, case MJR 22-61 in Southeast Memphis. The request is a major modification to remove a condition that allows only one sign no larger than 35 square feet at 16941 Winchester Road. Staff recommendation is approval. Item number 9, case MJR 22-62 in the airport adjacent area. The request is a time extension for East Shelby Drive Business Park PD at 3590 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 11, case MJR 22-65 in South Riverdale. Request is a site plan review for a new retail store in the Hickory Hill / Rains PD at 4240 Hickory Hill Road. Staff recommendation is approval. Item number 12, case MJR 22-66 in Collierville adjacent. The request is a major modification to allow a building expansion at 12191 Monterey Road. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 13, case MJR 22-67 in Buckingham Farms. The request is a convenience store with gas pumps at 4670 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 14, case MJR 22-68 in Buckingham Farms. The request is an increase in the permitted residential density from 13 units per acre to 13.5 units per acre at the south side of Tournament Drive, approximately 579 feet west of Hacks Crossroad. Staff recommendation is approval. Item number 15, case MJR 22-69 in Cordova. The request is a major modification to allow a gate to be installed across an access easement at 8100 Macon Station Drive. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 16, case PD 22-21 in the airport adjacent area. Request is a planned development to permit limited commercial mixed-use 1 district uses at 4747 Getwell Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 17, case PD 22-22 in Southeast Memphis. The request is a planned development to permit limited employment district uses at 5505 Malone Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 18, case PD 22-23 in Southeast Memphis. The request is an amendment to the existing plan development to raise the allowed height for a landfill at the corner of Benjystown Road and New Benjystown Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 19, case PD-24 in Cordova. The request is an amendment to redevelop an existing retail / office space into a mixed-use development at 8348 Macon Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 20, case PD 22-25 in Cordova. The request is an amendment to a planned residential development in 7524, 7530, 7556, and 7580 Raleigh-LaGrange Road and an adjacent parcel. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 21, case S22-47 in Sherwood Forest. The request is a 6-lot major residential subdivision of approximately 0.82 acres at 3573 Stewart Road. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 22, case S22-49 in the airport adjacent area. The request is a 49-lot major residential subdivision of approximately 9.91 acres at 4612 Boyingshire Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 22, case SUP 22-31 in North Memphis. The request is a special use permit to allow a new aluminum sorting and recycling facility at 526 Weekly Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with one condition. And item number 25, case Z22-12 in Oak Haven. The request is a rezoning of approximately .25 acres from residential single-family 8 to employment at 4225 Getwell Road. Staff recommendation is approval. That is our consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Anyone now wishing to pull a case number from the consent agenda, please come forward and give us the item number. Okay, we have pulled item number 6, 7, 10, and 24. The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with one vote, subject to the recommendation of DPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only items number 6, 7, 10, and 24 will have full independent public hearings. By voting on the consent agenda, each board member is affirming that he or she has read the staff report and agrees with its findings and, where applicable, its recommended conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve item number 2, case SUP 22-28. Item number 3, case MJR 22-56. Item number 4, case S22-42. Item number 5, case S22-43 is a hold. Item number 8, case MJR 22-61. Item number 9, case MJR 22-62. Item number 11, case MJR 22-65. Item number 12, case MJR 22-66. Item number 13, case MJR 22-67 is a hold. Item number 14, case MJR 22-68. Item number 15, case MJR 22-69. Item number 16, case PD 22-21. Item number 17, case PD 22-22. Item number 18, case PD 22-23. Item number 19, case PD 22-24. Item number 20, case PD 22-25. Item number 21, case S22-47, item number 22, case S22-49, item number 13, case SUP 22-31, and item number 25, case Z22-12.
Second.
I hear a second. Okay, is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now I will go to Dr. Pritchard on the regular agenda. Dr. Pritchard?
Agenda item number 6, SAC 22-08, airport adjacent.
Madam Chair, excuse me, I'm so sorry, Dr. Pritchard. We, at the last second, got a few cards, and there is one that was on consent number 9. So if the board, it hasn't been approved on consent, but if the board so chooses to reconsider that, I wanted to catch anyone before they left.
Okay. So number 9, we're going to hear.
Well, everyone voted yes on the consent agenda, so someone would have to make a motion to hear that case and vote on
Madam
it.
Chair, I move that we remove it from the consent agenda and hear that case.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on number 9? Pulling it from the consent agenda? Hearing none? Are you ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will hear number 9.
And Madam Chair, we have one more that we're trying to figure out. It doesn't have a case number. It just has a street intersection.
I can't hear what he's saying.
Let me
They don't
see
know
what
what case
that one
number
is.
is. 5? I'm trying to figure out if they didn't put a case number, they just put streets.
Which one is it? You don't know.
It doesn't have a case number, so we're trying to see.
I'm waiting on you. got to give us a case number.
Good morning, how are you? I know, I'm like in between two reserve spots, but there wasn't a reserve sign. I'm sure it's supposed to be there. I may be towed, I may not be.
I was with a circle
Across the street. Oh, good for you. Well, you're in the media a lot. Mm-hmm. On social media all the time. It's okay. You're all right. And I got tickled because last month I said, I've never seen your husband in anything. And this last month, your husband was in something.
See?
There you go. 16. What is 16? Airport adjacent, everything's. in
Madam Chair, it
airport
was item number 16, PD 22-21.
Item number 16.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do I hear a motion to remove item number 16 from the consent agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion from any of our board members? Is there any discussion? Okay, the motion is to remove item number 16 from the consent agenda and to hear item number 16. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, Dr. Pritchett, we're ready for 6 and 7. Oh,
All
go
right.
ahead. Okay.
Number 6, item number 6, SAC 22-08, airport adjacent. Close and vacate Shepherd's Tree Street north of Killarney Avenue. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? If you would give us your name and address, and then we'll hear your.
Madam Chair, Josh Whitehead, Birch Porter Johnson. I'm joined by Jedrick Britnam and Brad Kabar.
Thank you. Okay, staff will hear the case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kendra Cobbs, Division of Planning and Development. If we could, I would like to move forward to the following case, which is a companion case.
Okay.
It's a zoning case, 2210. I'd like to hear that first, since it's a companion to the street alley culture.
Okay, so we're going to hear 7 first?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Please.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. So this is a rezoning application, application number Z2210. The applicant is Memphis Airways Investors. This is located at the northwest corner of Killarney Avenue and Airways Boulevard. And the request is to rezone 58 acres from residential single family to 2 zoning districts. 48.13 acres would be employment and 9.87 acres would be conservation agriculture. Looking at the location, this is in the Whitehaven area and it is adjacent or near the airport. And the vicinity map to the right, it shows the subject property in yellow, the 58 acres. It is surrounded by residential to the north, the west, and the south. And there's also public notices that went out across the street, across Airways Boulevard. So the lots, these are multiple lots that comprise the 58 acres, and it is all zoned residential single family 8, R8. And the zoning in the area consists of residential urban 2, also R8 to the north. R8 is a zoning district to the west and to the south. Across Airways Boulevard, you do have the employment district. Looking at the land use map, this is a vacant lot. It's mostly wooded, and there's, as I've stated, residential to the west. It is a neighborhood, the Homestead subdivision. We also have residential to the north and the south, and across the street is industrial uses. So these are some photos of the area. The photo to the left is a view of the property from Airways Boulevard and Killarney Avenue, and that's looking northwest. This view to the right is a view of the property, and it is actually looking east off of Killarney Avenue. That stub street is Shepherd's Tree Street, which is associated with the previous case. These are additional views of the site from Killarney Avenue looking north. And you can see the mostly wooded area. And then also a view of the property from Airways Boulevard, and that's looking to the south. So the proposed plan is the 58 acres and to rezone all of the 58 acres. The orange band around on the right image, that orange band is the conservation agriculture request, and that is 9.87 acres, and it is being requested to act as a buffer to the residential neighborhoods to the northwest and south. And then within that orange, the white area is the remaining rezoning request, which would be to employment. So this request is inconsistent with our Memphis 3.0 plan. The Memphis 3.0 plan recommends single-family unit to be the future, or this is the land use designation, and it should be the future land use of the area per the Memphis 3.0 plan. And our degree of change map for that states that there is no change for that area. So to conclude, this 58 acres is being proposed to be rezoned from R8, residential single family 8, R8 to employment, and also to conservation agriculture. 48.13 of those acres are requested for employment, and 9.87 acres are requested for conservation agriculture. The conservation agriculture that is around the perimeter of the property is being proposed in order to serve as a buffer to the residential properties that are surrounding this rezoning request. The employment district is a light industrial zoning district, so it would permit a range of commercial and industrial uses, while conservation agriculture, its purpose is to preserve natural or agricultural uses. Despite there being a proposed buffer of conservation agriculture around the property, staff feels that the employment district is incompatible with the character of the area. And also the request is inconsistent with the Memphis Airport land use study. It's inconsistent with the Whitehaven Levee Planning District Comprehensive Plan and the Memphis 3.0 plan. The Memphis Airport land use study, the proposed use for the area was planned business, and the Whitehaven Levee Planning District Comp Plan proposed office uses for that area. And then Memphis 3.0, as I've already stated, proposes that remains single family. So with that, staff recommends rejection, and that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions right now of staff on this? And I want to ask a question. Do we want to hear this separately or together since they're companion cases? Do we want to hear the number 6 now, or what? Okay, we'll ask the staff to present number 6 as well.
Okay. So I'm going to go to, let's see. So right here, this image shows Shepherd's Tree Street. So the request is for a street alley closure, which is associated with the rezoning request. And the reason for the street alley closure request is to consolidate the properties because there are multiple properties that are requested within the rezoning. And so Shepherd's Tree Street is abutting those properties, and the request was to consolidate that into the entire area. And so this image, which is a part of the staff report on page 5, it shows that location in yellow. And then also this is a close-up, more of a close-up of that area with the zoning. Nothing has changed. It's R8 single family, and it's surrounded by R8 single family zoning. And images, this is our land use map, and it just shows that hatch mark area in orange that shows the stub street. Now I'm going to go back to the zoning presentation. And so this image to the right actually shows Shepherd's Tree Street right here, and it backs up to the wooded area. So that concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobbs. Any other questions of Ms. Cobbs at this time?
Yeah, Ms. Cobbs, have they implied or showed any desire to use this Shepherd Street as an access point?
That has not been shown or presented. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're ready for the applicant to do 7 and then 6.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Morning.
And board members. My name's Dedrick Brittenham. I'm a lawyer here in Memphis. My address is 3385 Airways Boulevard, Suite 229, 38116. Joining me in representation is Mr. Josh Whitehead of Birch, Porter, and Johnson, and the developer representative here is Mr. Brad Kaber of the TPA Group from Atlanta, Georgia. If you're ready for me to begin, I would like to proceed, please, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You have 10 minutes.
This case is the Memphis Airport Logistics Center, and this is an economic development project. This land is airport buyout property, and it's very important to know that fact. Although it's zoned residential, it cannot have any housing built on this property. So this is an economic development case. If you could go to slide number 2, please. Thank you. This slide shows the vicinity, the area zoning. As you can see, to the east or to the right of the subject property, all of this is EMP zoning, currently EMP zoning. The proposed property is in the middle, and the green is the conservation zone, down zoning. We're actually down zoning the green to be CA, and then the construction site would be EMP zoning. The next slide, please. This tells you the definition of employment zoning. This is an employment district in the UDC, page 15. As you see in the second line, it accommodates office. Now, staff said that those reports she talked about recommend office. This zoning also accommodates office. And what's important is to encourage economic growth. That's about halfway down, encourage economic growth. And that's what this case is all about, economic growth. And if you look at the last sentence, the last line, it says nearby residential or commercial districts. So this district contemplates residential may be nearby. Next slide, please. Conservation Agriculture District. This is the down zoning for the buffer. Now, and this concession is in direct response to the neighborhood association comments. We provided this buffer, and it consists of 9.87 acres. And what this does, as you can see in the highlight, it conserves undeveloped natural amenities. That's what this district is all about, the conservation of undeveloped areas. This means nothing can be built in this conservation agriculture area. Next slide, please. This slide shows the vicinity map of the economic engine in Memphis and Shelby County. Memphis Airport Authority and the Memphis Airport is the #1 economic engine in this region, in the tri-state Memphis, Arkansas, and North Mississippi, serving FedEx, UPS, DHS, and serving, those companies serve Memphis and the world. Next slide, please. This slide shows the logistics and distribution pattern that already exists in the area. You'll see you have Medtronics, you have Patterson Logistics, Fiskars, a number of companies already operate in this area. So this would be a natural and a progressive fit for this particular area. Now we'll turn it over to Mr. Brad Kaber, who will talk about TPA. Thank you.
Morning, board members. My name is Brad Kaber. I'm with TPA Group, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Address is 1776 Peachtree Street, Atlanta, Georgia, 30309. We are a real estate investment and development company, and we do work all across the United States. We've been investing in the city of Memphis for the last 5 years. We've put in about $150 million worth of new projects into this city, all of which have been very successful and house several Fortune 500 companies and employ hundreds of Memphians who get to go to a great facility and great company to do great work and get a good wage for it. We expect that this project would involve about a $50 million investment. Next slide, please. This is a photograph of our two most recent developments, which are directly across the street on Airways Boulevard, Medtronic and Frito-Lay. Those projects were completed last year and, again, employ hundreds of Memphians. We've received a letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce, who we've worked with in the past to place great tenants in our buildings, and they've noted that TPA in particular has made an emphasis to keep jobs in the city. We have not gone south to Mississippi. We enjoy working with the city and the folks in this town and all the utility providers and companies, and we plan to keep that business here in the city. Next slide, please. Again, the economic impact we would anticipate for this rezoning would generate somewhere between 500 and 1,500 jobs and also provide a tax basis of about $1 million to the city of Memphis and Shelby County. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Josh Whitehead.
Thanks, Brad. Madam Chair, again, Josh Whitehead, Birch Porter Johnson, 130 North Court. Next slide, please. Mr. Ragsdale, I think, disseminated our presentation. I'd like to introduce that as part of today's record. Let me briefly discuss the history of the buyout. The first time the concept of a buyout was discussed was in the mid-1980s. This is a clip from the commercial appeal from 1986, where the then president of the Airport Authority, Larry Cox, suggested that one way to ameliorate the noise issue that was being experienced in the subdivisions that surrounded the airport was to do a buyout. And indeed, the subject property that is before us this morning is a buyout property. Next slide, please. And that buyout concept was based upon the level of decibels that is generated from the runways. And this shows the 75, 70, and 65 boundaries of the decibel limits, which includes our property. Next slide, please. In 1992, the vice president of the Airport Authority articulated and was quoted in the paper something that was generally understood, but this really put the world on notice, that the Airport Authority had no intention to hold on to these properties forever. And his quote is, "Once all the land is purchased, it will be sold in blocks. We plan to sell the land and get it back on the tax rolls." It has been so long, I think, it's now been 25 years, that there's probably a conception among the city and particularly this neighborhood that the Airport Authority plans to maintain this park-like setting forever, but that was never the intention. Next slide. And indeed, this board has been involved with the manifestation of that quote from 1992. These red letters and numbers are a little difficult to read, but that started in 1992. These are the 4 projects that specifically involved former subdivisions that had been bought out, the houses raised, and then the streets, not only closed, but removed, and then returned to employment uses. Starting in 1992, the UPS, if you recall, Sweeney was moved a couple hundred yards to the east, and that subdivision went online and now is home of UPS. Following that, in 2015, I think most of the members on the dais today remember that. That was the Airport Authority's rental car facility that went into that subdivision just off Airways. And then much more recently, the 2 rezonings off of Ketchum near Airways Middle. Those were rezoned to EMP uses, and they had formerly been residential subdivisions. Next slide. The staff report makes takes a few positions with regard to the basis of staff's rejection, and I want to counter those real quickly. Number 1, Memphis 3.0 consistency. When the Memphis 3.0 future land use planning map, that's the color-coded map you see on the screen right now, when it was developed, there was no way for the staff that developed that to have the time or resources, they're doing a citywide map, to know the deed restrictions that involve all these properties. And indeed, our property, which has been color-coded, beige for single family, does have and will have a deed restriction that prohibits single family use. Next slide. Well, fear not. The future land use planning map is one of 7 things that the Land Use Control Board and the staff look at when determining 3.0 consistency. I've highlighted, that's number 1. I've highlighted an item in number 2 that speaks to existing adjacent land uses and zoning. Next slide, please. And indeed, our existing adjacent land use and zoning, we are abutted on the east by employment, on the south by employment, on the north by multifamily and commercial. Only on one side, and part of the south side, are we abutted by single family. Next slide. Well, how do we disagree with staff? I know it's unpleasant. But the UDC, section 1.9, states the boards and bodies, that's the City Council and the Land Use Control Board and the Board of Adjustment, are responsible for making their own determination of consistency. So there is a world in which this body can disagree with the finding of consistency that's been made by staff. Next slide. And here is this was the deed restriction that has been placed in our purchase agreement with the Airport Authority. The burden property may only be used for compatible uses. The burden property may not be used for residential purposes in accordance with 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 150. Next slide. And that Code of Federal Regulations speaks to that decibel level. The Whitehaven Levi plan and the airport area plan, both of which are cited in the staff report, both identified this parcel as office. That is true, but a much more recent small area plan, the Memphis Aerotropolis plan, next slide, identified this as a logistics and distribution center. And this plan made a big deal about the fact that logistics and distribution is the lifeblood of the Memphis economy. Next slide. And here's the map associated with the Aerotropolis plan. Our subject site is in red, and the corridor that is logistics and distribution is highlighted in green. Next slide. And this is that corridor. You can see it has developed as quite the logistics and distribution corridor. IRS is to the right. There's several distribution centers on the right, following all the way to, as Mr. Britton mentioned, and Mr. Kaber, the Medtronic and Frito-Lay properties on the left side of that screen. Next slide. The staff report also makes note of the 2004 plan development that the staff, and you, the Land Use Control Board, recommended rejection. I'd like to take a few moments to make a few distinctions between that plan development and our rezoning. Number one, and it was a much larger area, involved 18 more acres, which accommodated 2 buildings. Number two, it proposed a 35-foot buffer. As mentioned earlier, and as we're about to see in a moment, we are proposing a 150 and a 100-foot buffer against the residential uses. And number three, it was rejected largely based upon those two plans that sought office use on this property. Well, if there's one thing that has drastically changed since 2004 in the past 18 years is that our office market has drastically deteriorated. I know so many people that live these weird lives where they work from home. I couldn't do it. I won't do it. I refuse to do it. But many, many more people are working from home. So our office market has just been slashed, especially since 2004. Next slide. So here's our concept plan. In red and in dark green, we show the area that we propose to downzone from single-family residential to CA. Why is that significant? Mr. Britton mentioned it. We cannot do anything in that CA zone district. We can't put a driveway. We can't connect to Jordan. We cannot connect to Killarney to the south. We can only connect and access airways. So this will cocoon us, our project, from the surrounding uses. Next slide. And here's a cross-section of what that looks like. I think this is a pretty conservative cross-section. It shows 30-foot trees. I think many of those existing trees are probably 50 and 60 feet. But even those shorter 30-foot trees will block the view from the houses along Jordan, given that 150-foot buffer to the adjacent logistics buildings. Next slide. And here again here's some photographs that I took of the two stub streets. These, the one on the left will be closed as proposed if you approve, and will be curbed and guttered and sealed off completely. The one on the right, we do not propose to close because it does access those two driveways for the homes that face Jordan. Next slide. And this view, leaving the Holmesdale neighborhood towards Airways, will be unchanged given our proposal with the CA downzoning. So there will still be an undeveloped portion on the left side of the street. The right side will continue to be, at least for the foreseeable future, owned by the Airport Authority. Next slide. So to sum up, before I hand over the floor back to you, Madam Chair, so we can hear the opposition, we believe that this solidifies the airport area and the airport neighborhood's position as the preeminent neighborhood that is close to more jobs than any other neighborhood in the city of Memphis. Number two, we think that it'll generate $1 million in taxes. Since it's owned by the Airport Authority right now, it generates zero taxes. But more importantly than that, it will produce at least 500, but probably closer to 1,500 jobs if we have a light manufacturing use versus a distribution use within the city of Memphis. And mind you, all of the distribution that will occur will go south. A vast majority will go south to go to the interchange between State Line Road and I-55. State Line is just to the south on this map. The next interchange to get to the expressway system is Shelby Drive. So most of the traffic impact will be experienced along State Line and the portion of airways within the state of Mississippi and to some degree in the state of Tennessee. So there will be very little traffic impact within the city of Memphis and the state of Tennessee. And as I demonstrated earlier, not only is this probably the highest and best use of the property, we believe it's the only use given our deed restrictions. With that, Madam Chair, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of Mr. Whitehead at this time? Well, let me explain something to you. We did let him go over the 10 minutes because he's presenting two cases, and so we don't want you to think we're giving him any more time than anybody else, and we will do the same for the opposition. Okay, any questions of Mr. Whitehead or any of the applicant at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready to hear from the opposition. Give us your name, address, and your statement.
Good morning to the board. My name is Gwendolyn Keys, and I live at 5425 Hebron Drive in the Holmesdale area. I have been a resident of the Holmesdale neighborhood since 1978. Moved in my home, 5425 Hebron Drive, as a newlywed and raised 3 daughters, which are now productive and successful adults, due in part to the wonderful neighbors in the area in Holmesdale. I have seen how development projects in this area, such as Chemist Wilson, back in the 90s, attempted to build trailer homes on this stretch of Killarney, presently in question. Number 2, Old Dominion trucking line impacting on the south side of Airways, and the possible demolition of Long Street Church, which is on Airways near Holmes Road. Placing a warehouse or any EMP or whatever they want to call it, a large facility for mass production will not enhance our neighborhood. It will depreciate the value of our homes, increase traffic down Killarney and into the other corridors of the Holmesdale neighborhood. By increasing traffic, will increase crime, increase trashing of the neighborhood, and lead to an unhealthy neighborhood. We are middle-class working neighbors that take pride in our neighborhood. Approximately 75% of our senior citizens, and are very anxious about this proposal that would definitely be a negative impact on our way of life. We have already seen some negative impact that already exists by Old Dominion with our neighbors on Killarney to the south. They are inundated with flooding when it rains from the enslopement on the Old Dominion trucking line, and to the far west, near Santa Monica, where it meets to the interstate, those neighbors have problems with flooding also. They talk about all the economic growth and what have you. There has been a lot of economic growth in that area already, east, on the other side with Patterson and Old Dominion. We do have wildlife in those wooded areas. And they said it would be 50 feet from my neighbor's back door, the last person on Killarney. So members of the board, just close your eyes and think of if you were that neighbor that was facing that Shepherd Street tree and having a warehouse that you have to come out your back door and look at, and all the construction and the dust and what have you will be in your face. Just imagine, close your eyes and think that you were coming out to that type of thing every day. Some of my neighbors from Old Dominion have had to replace their roofs and their AC systems from the construction from Old Dominion. I implore you to vote no in opposition and keep Ms. Cobb's rejection steadfast. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, give us your name and address.
Good morning and the City Council, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk to you about
Can you give us your name and address, please, sir? Name and address. Name and address.
I will. My name is Charles Hudson. I live at 1915 Pomona. I have lived in this neighborhood for 45 years. And I was able to, and I raised 3 girls. And I bought this neighborhood after I moved back from Richmond, Virginia, because it was a quiet neighborhood. I enjoyed the school system I thought was there at that particular time. And we were And that's kind of the situation I wanted it to stay, but I wanted to say something, and I'm just kind of pitch hitting on what Mrs. Keys has just said, because what I have done is I've had a few meetings with people in our neighborhood about what is going on, and from those meetings we came up with a few things that we felt like was really bothering us, and I'm trying not to be redundant to things that has already been said. One of the things I like to say is this: the pictures that were taken, they were standing almost in somebody's yard, looking out toward airways. And I was looking at these slides, like that one right there. If you take and turn the camera around and look back at the residential area, it will look altogether differently, because you'll see all those houses where people have kept the yard up and kept things looking really nice. Now, what I have done is I've had some meetings with some of the representatives in our neighborhood, and I want you to know some of the things that they have said about how they felt about things. First thing they said is, we do not want warehouses in our neighborhood. And I ask you, who would like to have warehouses in their neighborhood like that? Who would like to live next to a warehouse? These are their comments. We do not want to lower the value of our houses. They have been doing a lot of fixing up in the neighborhood and has kept the neighborhood looking really nice. They don't want the property to devalue because of that. Number two, if the area is rezoned, there will be other commercial facilities coming in this area and want to build, and it will just become a domino effect where people just start moving in with commercial properties. Number four, in addition, and with additional commercial vehicles on airways, we're seeing an additional amount of increase in potholes and other damages to the neighborhood. And as Ms. Keys has said, the community will be blocked in from I-55 interstate, and we are somewhat of a closed neighborhood, and now we're going to be closed in additionally. When I first moved in, which was one of the reasons why I bought in that neighborhood, and that was we were only about a mile from I-55. Now, because of people moving in and doing this, we are now 55. We're now 3 to 4 miles from I-55. We have already been duped once by the airport buying out and took places to make room for years ago for a Boeing plane that never did materialize. And I had, when they bought up those houses, I had friends that lived there, and they had to move out. The families were displaced, not because they wanted to move, but because the corporate grieved and were not adequately reimbursed for their removing and rerouting. And I'd like to say this. The members of that community have said, instead of building warehouses and corporate buildings, why not replace the area with homes like the one that was previously there? Plus, there are a lot of vacant area north on Shelby Drive and Airways up to Winchester, and going east on Holmes Road past Airways that could be used as well, which is not near any homes. The noise level, the high traffic, the 18-wheelers, the trash, bright lights, will cause a big disruption in our peace and tranquility and devalue our home as well as put our safety in jeopardy. We also have a number of animals, as Mrs. Keys has mentioned, which I have enjoyed over the years, and those deers, raccoons, possums, rabbits, etc. And I don't know what's supposed to happen to them unless they're going to end up being some type of road kill or something. So, in ending, our neighbors are very much concerned about this matter and do not want these rezoning, and they do not want these high, tall commercial buildings in the front of their properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you give us your name and address in your statement.
Vicky Smith, 5065 Cedar Valley Drive, 38116. I've lived in my home for about 50 years. I've always been a day late and a dollar short. I wasn't part of the buyout. I got $700 to soundproof, which wasn't enough money. I worked with the McLemores who own the property, a lot of the property there, and they own several markets here. I've seen the growth in the area. When Old Dominion was built, you could find deer on the street, raccoons on the street, other animals that I could not identify. We're going to displace our wildlife. Also, there's been more traffic, there's been more trash, and the jobs that were mentioned, we never heard what kind of jobs they were. As a former school counselor, I had to be aware of jobs, occupations, everything around our area. Most of these are warehouse jobs or lower paying jobs. I'm not sure what they presented. I heard the numbers, but I didn't hear a breakdown. I'm asking you to reject it because sometimes one can throw it out of balance, and that's what will happen in this case. How do I say that? Hey, I'm a big lady. I was thrown out of balance with one, then another, and that's what we have seen happen here. We don't need one more. If you wouldn't want it in your backyard, don't put it in ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of any of the opposition at this time? Any questions of the opposition? Okay, we're ready for the applicant to give us your 3-minute rebuttal or 6-minute rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dedrick Brittenham again. I'm going to handle the issue regarding property values, and Mr. Whitehead is handing out an opinion from Mr. Charles Blow, CAE. Mr. Blow has been in the appraisal and property assessment business for 40 years. He's a 25-year employee, now retired of Shelby County Assessor's Office. And here is a copy. Do you have a copy of the Mr. Blow's report? Is that what you're looking at now? Okay. Now, at this point, I'm going to let Mr. Blow give you a summary of his report. In a nutshell, though, what he's going to tell you is that the property values will not, this development would not have any adverse impact on the property values and could very well increase the property values. Thank you. Mr. Blow?
Yes. Good morning, board members. Charles Blow. My address is County Road 647, Boonville, Mississippi. I've studied this neighborhood, taken a good look at it, been out there a couple of times, driven around it. a nice area. It's stable. There's a lot of owner occupancy there, a high degree of owner occupancy. I think the real estate market over the last couple of years has been fairly strong. The buffers around this proposed area, I think, will continue to shelter the area to a certain degree and maintain the aesthetics. I think that there's the possibility of some upside from the creation of new jobs that are in proximity to the neighborhood. And based on the neighborhood being very stable and demonstrating strong demand, I think that strong demand will continue into the future, and I do not anticipate any adverse influence on property values from this development.
Thank you, Mr. Blow. Madam Chair, I just want to briefly go through some of the comments that were made by the opposition. And Ms. Cobbs, if you don't mind calling up the concept plan that we had in my presentation. First of all, Marty Lipinski's here, who's been practicing traffic engineering for decades. He's probably the preeminent traffic engineer in the city. He did do a report that I have copies of. If you need those to be disseminated, but the important thing about that traffic report was the fact that Airways operates at half the capacity it could and still have A or B level of service. It was built to accommodate uses such as this. Number two, on flooding, we are working with the city of Memphis. If you notice in the top left corner of our property, there's a big blue shape. That represents a detention pond to be a regional detention center not unlike the ones that were installed at Catholic High School, CBU, and other places throughout the city to accommodate the growth not only of sites such as this, but existing flooding issues in the surroundings. Killarney, the houses along, if you advance the slides, Ms. Cobbs, a few, maybe about 3 or 4 more. The houses along Killarney that are immediately adjacent, maybe 2 more, to our site were built in 2002, well after, it's after the Q&A slide, I'm sorry. Built well after the fact that this subject site would be utilized as something non-residential in the future. We are the number 9 warehouse and distribution and logistics market in the country. And that is largely due to being the number 2 freight airport in the world. We will increasingly see these empty lots that Mr. Hudson mentioned. They will increasingly become part of the distribution and logistics corridor. As far as paying jobs, this developer recently developed Medtronic at the corner of Holmes and Airways. That pays on average $50,000 a year. And the Frito-Lay, the Amazon building pays $20 an hour. Finally, Madam Chair, I want to go over a few of the concessions that we have provided to the opposition. Again, we have provided a 150 to 100 foot, depending on where it is, buffer to envelop our property. We're going to offer the city engineer the erection of no truck signs, just in the event that a truck gets lost and does not take Airways to State Line Road to get to I-55. We are willing to place in our deed restrictions related to noise and building height. The EMP district allows us 60 feet. TPA's previous building are around 40 to 48. We can limit the height in our deed restrictions, so it's less than the allowable height under the EMP district. We believe that this will solidify and provide jobs to the city of Memphis. The trend, thankfully, is no longer to place these kinds of jobs at the edge of the city. That is still happening, admittedly, but there's a new trend, and TPA has been at the forefront of this trend to locate these kinds of jobs, these well-paying jobs, inside the city, near the people that will be working at those jobs, at those locations. Number 5, the truck traffic. The city of Memphis will be collecting the taxes, but most of the negative impacts with regard to the truck traffic will be inside the state of Mississippi. And finally, I think it's serendipitous perhaps that item number 22 on this agenda calls out and proposed and was approved for a 49-lot subdivision in this neighborhood. I think that supports Mr. Blow's supposition that the fact that this is a warehouse and distribution mecca for the region and for the country is actually supportive of additional housing. With that, Madam Chair, I'll relinquish the floor and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions of the applicants? Anybody have any questions?
Yes, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
go ahead.
Mr. Whitehead.
Yes, sir.
You know, looking at the EMP zoning, I'm pretty familiar with the area down the airway between Holmes and State Line. I see the warehouses, industrials on the east side of Airways. Are we proposing something similar to that over on the west side?
Yes, but that trend has begun. I think starting with the Airport Authority's car storage lot just north of Rains Road, and then continuing with the Old Dominion site immediately to our west.
Right.
South, excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, I have a bit of a problem. I know you have a 150-foot buffer on the west of your property. Are those mature trees now? Is that something you have to plant?
So this is perhaps key to your question. We will, because the 100, that's the 2004 35-foot buffer that we are scoffing at. Our 150-foot buffer, because it will be zoned, down-zoned to the CA district, we won't be able to touch those trees. But what we plan on doing, because that 150-foot buffer well exceeds the minimum 15-foot buffer that's provided in the UDC, but because we'll probably put the fence on our side of that buffer versus the neighbor's side, because if we put it on the neighbor's side, we'd probably have to tear down some trees and grade the land. We're going to put it on the zoning district line. We will have to go to OPD to request administrative deviation. Through that process, we will also propose to fill in any gaps, any large gaps of any size with evergreen landscaping of a holly or some other nature that can grow fast to fill in those gaps.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Whitehead, are you comparing the proposed buildings to you mentioned the airport rental car facilities. Those buildings are nowhere near the size of these proposed buildings.
I was comparing the use. So that use of a storage facility is considered an EMP use. So just purely the use is the comparison.
I was about to say that's if that was being put there, I don't even think they would have an issue with this. Those are much smaller buildings, but just in general, I can't support this. As a person, thank you. But as the person said, and you've heard me say before, especially the people on that back row, they have to watch this for now on. And people do not buy houses. I think the appraiser mentioned, I have always rejected that building warehouses near residential will enhance or the values of their homes. There's no way. And people that have the means to buy houses will not buy a house where you see a warehouse in your backyard all the time. I believe we should protect neighborhoods. So I urge my colleagues to not vote for this. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Ms. McConnell?
I have a question for staff. Oh, sorry. I have a question for staff. So the applicant said that houses can't be put on this property because of noise restrictions. But as Josh mentioned, we're approving a 49 lot subdivision about 5 minutes away. So if we can develop here on Boeingshire, but we can't develop at Killarney? I'm confused by this point.
I think with this request, the important thing to keep in mind is that it is a rezoning request. And so with an employment zoning district, it's open to a whole host of uses. So, you know, and I understand what you're saying with the development, that's residential. There could possibly, if development was desired at this lot, it could possibly be a zoning district that would not be industrial or light industrial. It could be more in line, possibly, that would be compatible with the neighborhood along office uses, something of that nature. But with it being employment and all the different uses that could come into play, and also I understand that there are concessions that are being proposed for this site, but down the road, if it were to be redeveloped, it may not necessarily be this type of development. It could be anything that is allowed within the employment district.
But is this specific property allowed to be developed for single-family residential?
I can't speak to that. I have not seen anything that, you know, within the deed restrictions that says single family is not permitted. Haven't received or reviewed any of that information, so I really can't speak to that.
I think that may be a question for the applicant. Is the seller only willing to sell the property with this specific deed restriction, only to eliminate residential use in its totality?
Thank you for the question. This property is a part of the airport buyout program, which happened in the late 80s and early 90s. The reason the airport, could you go to the noise contour slide, please, ma'am? The reason the airport authority purchased this property is because of the noise contour that you're going to see shortly. All of this property was bought out by the airport authority using City of Memphis money, Shelby County money, State of Tennessee money, and Federal Aviation Authority money, FAA. And the FAA requirements say that's the reason the properties were bought out, because they were within this yellow noise contour that you see on this map. And forevermore, because of the airport authority, no property that was bought out by the airport authority can have residential zoning or residential construction. Now, the zoning is just a leftover or a remnant of what it used to be. Frankly, it should have been updated. The zoning should have been updated by the Memphis and Shelby County authorities so that it's modern and up to date. So the residential designation is a remnant of 1980s, which is on this property. And you saw a slide earlier where the FAA made a reference to the FAA code. That federal regulation says that none of this property can be used for residential forevermore. And the airport authority, the mission is to put this property back on the tax roll, because right now it's a zero producing tax property. And that's all along Airways, as Mr. Thomas, you pointed out, all along Airways. And now, though, we have demand to redevelop this property into logistics and distribution, providing jobs. And what is key is this Medtronics property or location at the corner of Airways and Homes. Those are high-paying jobs. And they're not, quote, warehouse jobs, they're high-paying jobs. It's light assembly, which the EPA allows.
Okay, I have a question. Mary Sharp. I live in that area, but more near to Shelby Drive.
Yes, ma'am.
And I noticed that Killarney had houses built, brand new houses built after that particular airport noise zone situation was over. So how was the houses built in 2004 on Killarney?
They were not within that contour, ma'am.
Okay.
If they were in the contour, they couldn't be built. And that goes to the Boyne-Shire question as well. Those houses, or this new subdivision on Boyne-Shire is outside this contour. If you're outside the contour, then you're allowed to construct residential. That goes to the point of there will not be any weakness in the sale and marketing of houses that are outside the contour that may be nearby to logistics and distribution. That shows that there's still a demand for that property.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
if I may,
Okay.
the map that is shown up on the screen, the site is marked by the star. It's on the other side of the contour.
Well,
I can't see the star. Where's
that's
the
a good observation. However, a portion of the site is well within the contour, ma'am.
Okay.
The star is in the middle of the property. So the contour, though, however, is drawn over the site. And most importantly, the airport authority purchased the entire site as part of the airport buyout program.
Mr. Britton, my question, how old is the contour, the decibel, how old, how long is that, how old is it? Like this information, this data, was this done last year, yesterday?
No, sir, I believe this was part of the airport buyout program. This
initial 1986.
Pardon?
This was the initial 1986 decibel sound?
I can't say that for sure, but I suspect it is.
I understand.
Anybody else? Any more questions?
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
sir.
just, Mr. Britton, just to be clear, that contour line, you could build residential to the west of that contour line?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the subdivision that Madam talked about is outside that contour line. O'Connell.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Call in one more time. Okay, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting. No, that includes us, right here. Okay. All right, we're going to close the public portion. Can we get the motion, Dr. Pritchard?
Do you want these two together?
We're going to vote on them separately, right? Or vote on them together? Separately? We're going to vote on them
All right.
separately.
Agenda item number 6, SAC 22-08, airport adjacent. Close and vacate Shepherd's Tree Street north of Killarney. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, is there any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Big proponent of Memphis moving things forward. Love to see growth and development in new areas and spark new interests and new job opportunities. However, with this particular project, it's seemingly more in a space of a single-family residence, kind of presenting an opportunity for spot zoning, not necessarily that, but it's just too close to comfort for me. For that reason, I am going to vote no on this project.
Okay. All right, any further discussion?
Madam Chair, just a couple comments. I have such respect for these developers, and they do the right thing, good folks that I do a lot of work with personally. We're still dealing with this buyout issue from decades ago, and it's such a fragile area between really hard distribution, commercial stuff, and this really nice, well-maintained neighborhood. And I just can't support it. I sense that if I lived in a neighborhood, I'd feel the same way. I think the applicant has done everything they can to minimize the impact, but I still think it's too much, just frankly, and it's a comment.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? I assume we're ready to vote. It will probably be individual. Okay?
Mr. Fleming?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. O'Connell?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace,
No.
Chair Sharp.
No.
Motion fails.
Failed. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
All
you for
right.
your time and attention.
Was that for 6 and 7? No, we haven't done 7.
Oh, I thought it was
Oh,
separate.
I'm sorry. Okay, now we're ready for number 7.
Yeah, separate.
Agenda item number 7, Z22-10, airport adjacent, rezoning of plus or minus 58 acres from residential single-family R8 to employment at 5351 Airways Boulevard. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote.
Mr.
All in
Fleming?
favor?
Oh, you want to just do it?
Yeah, all in favor? Those opposed?
No.
Do we need to do it individually? Okay, all right. Motion fails.
Thank you. We now go to number 9, is that correct?
Yes, we're now on number 9 for the next motion.
MJR, is that 22?
I thought it was
-62, airport adjacent, correspondence to PD 96-348, a time extension for East Shelby Drive Business Park PD at 3590 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay. Applicant, you can give us your name one more time?
Yes, ma'am. Josh Whitehead versus Porter Johnson, 130 North Court, and I'm joined by Landon Williams at Cushman & Wakefield.
Okay, thank you. Is the opposition here? The opposition, there's one in opposition? Okay, we're ready for the staff report. I'm sorry.
All right, Lucas Skinner with the Division of Planning and Development. This case is MJR 2022-62. This is a time extension for the East Shelby Drive Business Park PD to allow warehousing at 3590 Shelby Drive. This may look a little bit familiar to the board, as this case was presented several months ago as a rezoning, which was rejected ultimately by this board and council. So the applicant has refiled this to extend the PD that actually has existed on the site. So again, this is the parcel. It's just short of 34 acres. It stretches between Arnold Road and East Shelby Drive, just west of a lot of the distriplex industrial uses off of Getwell. Zoning and land use, the property is currently vacant, heavily wooded, and lies between some single-family residential uses to the west, as well as some multifamily to the south, and then industrial to the east and to the northeast. Just to provide an aerial view of the site, again, it's very heavily wooded. There are some existing PDs and by right industrial uses sort of to the south and east of the site, and again, residential to the west. So again, there was a PD approved very early 1997 for essentially the same request for light industrial. So the applicant has wanted to basically revive the PD, bringing it a little bit more into modern code with zoning, and has provided a conceptual site plan to show essentially a large warehouse sort of in the center of the lot, a little more towards Arnold Road, with some peripheral storage would be possible around the sides, with very minimal access, mainly from East Shelby Drive, and then just one access point from Arnold Road. So in conclusion, again, the applicant is reviving the East Shelby Drive Business Park PD to allow warehousing at this site. Staff feels that given the fact that this is a PD, we're able to condition this more than we would with the rezoning, that we've come to at least an agreement between our parties, between staff and the applicant, to get it to a point where we feel it won't be injurious to the surrounding neighborhood. With that, is not consistent with the Memphis 3.0 plan, but we are still recommending approval with one site condition and revisions to the outline plan conditions. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff right now?
Yes, you mentioned, now I remember this one coming up before. I think we rejected it because of not allowing traffic to go out onto Arnold, right?
Correct, right, because very similar to the last case with rezonings, we can't condition in any sort of manner, so.
So what's different now?
Well, with this, we've essentially been able to allow, and I can allow Josh to speak to this some as well, but there's essentially just vehicle-only access to Arnold, and then only truck access would be from Shelby Drive.
And what consideration was given to the neighborhoods to the west of that? Because that's still there. And that traffic on Arnold, that has not changed. Have you, and I know you all have been out there to see it, that's a 2-lane street. It's dangerous right there. And to dump vehicles onto there at that point is bad. You have that pallet company that's across the street from there where they would go, and they have 18-wheelers, and it causes congestion right there and problems. And I've seen wrecks there that horrible, because you have the hills, and when you go over the hill, you're already up on things. I don't see where the conditions have changed with this one, where we should, I'm surprised we even reconsidering this one. Yeah. But I guess we'll hear what my friend, Mr. Whitehead, has to say on this one.
Okay, any other questions of staff right now? We're ready for you, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Lucas, I believe you have a PowerPoint presentation on that flash drive. I'll go through these slides real quickly because I do want to respond to Mr. Thomas's comments as quickly as possible. Again, Josh Whitehead, Burris Porter Johnson. I'm joined by with Landon Williams of Cushman Wakefield. I'll start with this article in the December 25th Christmas morning Daily Memphian. Next slide, that talks about the impact Blue Oval is having on our distribution sector throughout the region. Our vacancy rate is at a historical low for warehouse and distribution uses, below 6%. It's the darling of real estate, says Eric Furman of Cry-like, and we're about to see a ripple effect of Blue Oval that will last 20 years. So just as there's a housing crisis in many respects in this region, there's also a crisis with enough distribution centers. And as I mentioned earlier, we are now ranked the number 9 market for this sector in the country. Next slide. So let's take a larger view. The subject site is highlighted in yellow. The BNSF yards, which have recently expanded, is to the right. To the east, the airport is highlighted in yellow to the west. I highlight a few major infrastructure improvements that have been made in this area. Number one, Shelby Drive was widened to 7 lanes in the 1990s, specifically in response to the increased light industrialization of the general Capleville area. And number two, the $258 million project that involves the quasi-expressway conversion of Lamar. I say quasi because it will involve interchanges at Shelby, namely down the street from this site, Holmes, and Winchester to the north. Next slide. And I think it's our responsibility to, with the large amounts of public infrastructure that have been infused in this neighborhood, it's our responsibility to change the land use and the zoning to accommodate exactly what was intended by those public infrastructure improvements. This slide you've already seen. This is highlighted in red star. It's in a different corridor, but still a logistics and distribution corridor as identified in the Aerotropolis plan. Next slide. And when it comes to adjacent land uses, there are empty residentially zoned lots to our immediate west. 600 feet to the west of our site is a subdivision, but to the east, highlighted here in magenta, and to some degree to the north and west are light industrial land uses. Next slide. I'm going to turn the floor over to Landon Williams, who is going to speak about the market.
Thank you, Josh. Landon Williams with Cushman & Wakefield Commercial Advisors. And just going to quickly talk to you about, I've been industrial capital markets broker dealing with investors and industrial product here in the Memphis area for a long time now. And so right now, we're in an era or a season of historically low vacancy from a perspective of industrial real estate. And so in our market particularly, this is a national situation, but particularly in our southeast submarket. Next slide. So you can see here that the vacancy rate, the line that's going up and down, you can see what I was just referencing is historical low season right now of basically if you're a tenant, a business that out there that needs space, it's there's very little to no space for you to occupy. So where does that push you? It pushes you outside of our market, and so you can see correspondingly the rental rates have gone up because of just the natural kind of economic nature of that. And so we can go to the next slide. So looking at construction sites and kind of what's going on by different key submarkets within the greater kind of Memphis, but greater Memphis market, even spreading out. You can see DeSoto County, 4.1 million square feet going, and then Marshall County, 5 million square feet. Southwest submarket has 1 million, and the Southeast, 2.6. So it's just, we're trying to, as opportunity continues to spread, there's still lots of demand for users to be in this area near the infrastructure that Josh referenced. For a variety of reasons. This is not just in Memphis, but also in markets around the country. And so that is just a quick snapshot of really supply and demand for industrial in the Memphis area, but specific the Southeast submarket.
Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. Next slide. I do want to, let's go, here's our site plan, and the difference between our last project being a rezoning and this project being this being a PD, we can condition it to narrative conditions as well as a graphical site plan. Next slide. Again, this is our property to the east. It is a lumber yard, essentially. Next slide. Here's the view, as Mr. Thomas mentioned. There's a pallet company on Airways to our east. Next slide. And here, I'll press the next slide real quick. I want to go over some of the changes that we've made. Number one, directly in response, I think it was a comment that Mr. Thomas made as it relates to the condominiums that are across the street on the south side of Shelby. We are proposing a 150-foot landscaped area. There's some trees there. We have conditioned this in such a way where we will augment that landscaping to fill in any gaps. So the condominiums to the south, which are largely renter occupied, but they're residential uses nonetheless, will be buffered from any distribution use by a 150-foot highly vegetated buffer. Number two, we've increased our buffer along Arnold Road because there's no residences directly across the street, more to our west. But this is kind of the dividing point where the residential part of Arnold begins, and we want to maintain that residential look. Mr. Thomas, I think we'd be willing, well, first of all, what we have done, A, and then B, what we will be willing to do. What we have done is we've conditioned this in such a way where the curbing of that driveway onto Arnold will not accommodate trucks. Number two, we will have signage that both internal and external to the site that will read no trucks. So that will be purely employee access. What we'd be willing to do is perhaps make that a right in, right out, or condition this in such a way where we can widen Arnold, at least for some area, to allow a left in, left out from that driveway. But going back to what we we have proposed, we've scrapped the idea of rezoning this property. We've gone back to the original approval from some 20 plus years ago. And what we've done to those conditions is we've added more restrictions. We're now restricting ourselves from gas stations, truck stops, and car sales because we can do that through the PD process. And finally, we are having a western drive for employee access onto Shelby Drive, and that is limited to vehicular traffic. Next slide, Mr. Lucas. I want to talk to the current zoning because we're not rezoning this from single-family residential rezoning. I use that term loosely. We are asking for a PD on multifamily property. This property is zoned multifamily. According to the ITE, which is the Bible for traffic engineers, multifamily generates 3 times the number of PM traffic trips as a distribution use. Number 2, the ITE says this use will probably increase traffic by less than 4%. Okay? Number 3, Shelby Drive currently has 47,000 trips per day. It can operate at a good level of service at 55. Our 4% increase will still keep us well within the range and the accommodations that were made when Shelby Drive was widened when I was in high school from 2 to 7 lanes. Next slide. And finally, we talked about jobs and taxes. This property, not dissimilar from the last property, pays very little in taxes currently. Based upon the size of the site, we believe it could produce as much as $450,000 in city and county taxes, as well as produce several hundred jobs for this neighborhood. With that, Madam Chair, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. We have any questions for Mr. Whitehead? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the opposition. Amy Terry, give us your name, address, and your statement.
Good morning. My name is Amy Terry. I live at 4460 Old Quarry Road, and the road to my house comes off of Arnold Road. The Arnold Road is not a good place for driveway access or nothing, period. It is a 2-lane road, it's hilly, and there's no curbs, there's like dirt sidewalk, and people are already using it for illegal dumping, and the access that they've already made the path off of Arnold Road, they've already dumped tires there. That is not a good place, period, to come in and out of. And especially if there's no traffic lights and the road can't be wide, it's not gonna help us at all. And then there's the wildlife that's back there that my backyard is backs up into this property. The wildlife, like the squirrels, the rabbits, the possum, all those things comes up into my backyard as it is already, and the other neighbors that's on the street with me. But I'm all for economic growth, I'm all for that kind of development and stuff. I'm not against it, but I don't want it to impact my life negative either. I've been on that property since 1977, and we raised 3 girls there and 2 grandchildren. It's become our home, and we love our community, we love our neighborhood. We don't have a lot of crime and stuff now, and like the warehouse that's in the back of the property already, we get the noise from there. So what kind of barrier is that gonna be for us to block out some of this noise? And then there's a little trench on that property that stays filled with water when it rains. And if the wildlife are feeding off of that for water and stuff, what's gonna happen to that? I mean, they can't come our way because on Get Well, there's companies and traffic and stuff. They're gonna come our way, they're not going the other way. And that's not gonna be a good environment for us. So I just hope that you would consider those things, and as well as the tax rate, because when you build warehousing and stuff behind people's property, don't nobody want to buy your property because they don't want to live behind a warehouse. I mean, I hear noise constantly from the warehouses as it is. So I just hope you all would take those things into consideration before you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Terry? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the applicant for your rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I don't know if this is the best map to view, but I know some of you are very familiar with this neighborhood. If you can see our yellow site, Arnold Road does terminate, Prescott Road terminates where Arnold Road connects to it at our site, and Old Quarry is just north of there. It's one of the couple subdivisions that are along Prescott, north of Arnold. I just conferred with Landon and maybe make a third offer. So we're willing to do a right in, right out. We're willing to widen Arnold to accommodate a left turn. But Landon shared with me the fact that we could probably accommodate the traffic that comes to the site solely accessing Shelby Drive. So the third option would be just to cut off any access to Arnold Road whatsoever.
Thank you. Any questions? Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
Move approval of agenda item number 9, MJR 22-62.
Second.
Okay, it has been motioned, and we do have a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, if the applicant is conveying to us, I believe he just did, that they're willing to just accommodate the project with traffic off of East Shelby Drive, I would like to offer that as an amendment to the main motion.
Okay.
I'll second that amendment.
All right. We have the motion with an amended portion as per Mr. Whitehead. Do you need to repeat it, or we got it?
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Access only off of East Shelby Drive, none off of Arnold.
Okay, thank you. All right. No more discussion? Then I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Now, Madam Chair, I believe we go to agenda item number 10, MJR 22-63, East Memphis. Correspondence to PD 83-42, major modification to add multifamily uses to Lot 2 at 6141 Poplar Pike. Staff recommends approval with conditions.
Okay, is the applicant present where you can introduce yourself on item number 10?
We got.
Pardon? The applicant? Sorry. On number 10?
Hi, good morning.
Okay, give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jamie Gittler. I'm a partner with Churchwick Partners. We own the Extended Stay Hotel at 6141 Poplar Pike. My home address is 198 Ocean Avenue, Woodmere, New York. So I'm a Long Island boy coming all the way down to Memphis.
Thank you. Okay, did you have something you want to say, sir? Mr. D.
Thank you for the recognition, Madam Chair. Dedrick Brittenham, 3385 Airways Boulevard, Suite 229. I'm here in opposition to this case. I represent a major property owner in the area, and there are also 4 neighborhood associations here in opposition. We're requesting a 1-month hold on this case, please.
Okay, thank you. Now it's up to us to vote on whether we want to hear it and hold it, whether we want to hear it and discuss it.
Madam Chair.
Whether...
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think if I could suggest possibly asking the applicant if he's in agreement with a hold, we can do whatever we want to do, but I think we ought to at least hear from him.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did fly in from New York to come here. I think we're understandable that the opposition would like more time to discuss. I think from our perspective, we did everything we had to do in terms of giving a notice period to allow for discussion. We, in fact, reached out to the opposition on numerous occasions over the last several days since chatter started appearing on Facebook and other social media sites, and that engagement was not reciprocated. So my preference is to go ahead and discuss the issue today if we can.
Thank you. Okay, in that case, do we need to vote whether we want to hold it, or we need to?
I would move that we hold the case for 30 days.
Second.
It has been moved. We have a second to hold it. Applicant wishes to go through with it. Okay, do we want to hear it and hold it, or do we want to hold it?
Hold it.
Okay, and is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? We are voting now on a hold. Okay, we're ready for, hear none. I assume we're ready to vote.
I might just say this to the applicant. I know, you flew in from New York. It's not that far a flight. I'm from New York. It's not that hard to get here. But I think it may be it may be beneficial for you to hold it for 30 days and try to get with the community here and work out the differences rather than.
So I guess my only response to that would be, obviously, we're going to do whatever the members of this esteemed board tell us to do. Obviously, we're going to be in compliance with that. My only frustration is that over the last several days, we did reach out to the opposition and there was no engagement from their side. And so I understand that you want 30 days. I can't engage with someone that's not talking to me.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just an observation, sir. I can't tell you how many emails and calls I've had on this case, probably more than any in the last 30 years I've been on this board. There's opposition. There's no one, there's lots. So that's the frustration from their point of view. I don't expect a comment back from you. I'm just saying to you, just give it a month, talk to them. You've got lots of different people. And Mr. Brittenham is a good place to start. He can speak on behalf of all those neighbors.
Obviously, if the board feels that way and that's your recommendation, then we understand.
We're gonna.
One comment for the record. I did send the gentleman, the applicant, an email saying I was involved with the case. And that was early yesterday morning, because I got involved, I want to say Tuesday evening. Thank you very much for your consideration. We'll hold.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion that we hold this? Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. Are we going to do it all together or individually? All together. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're going to hold it for a month.
Thank you very much.
Then, Madam Chair, I believe we go to agenda item number 24.
16.
16? Oh, we voted to. All right, we'll go to agenda item number 16, PD 22-21 something. Airport adjacent plan development to permit limited commercial mixed-use 1 district at 4747 Getwell Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay, is the applicant present?
No, she left.
Okay, we're on item number 16.
Oh, I thought it was 24.
No, we're on 16 right now.
I think Brenda left. I don't think she knows it was required.
Madam Chair, it appears that an applicant or a representative is not here.
So what do we do in that case?
Hold it.
Yeah, because we had
Hold
approved
for,
the
and
consent
just to clarify, it's
agenda.
1 month, and I know that, just so, we did need to make sure that the applicant on the previous case, because we did have in one instance, someone showed up 30 days later, and we did not have a hearing that day, so it's a 1 month hold.
So on number 16, we're going to hold it?
If the applicant,
Since the applicant is not here?
Yeah.
and I think that you can decide whether to hear there is one person in opposition or to hold.
Let's hold it.
Okay. Can I get a motion to hold it then, or do we automatically hold it?
Now, I'll move to hold for 30 days.
Okay, do
I'll
I have a
second.
second?
I'll
Do we have any discussion? Okay, we're now voting on the whole of number 16 due to the fact that the applicant is not here. Okay, all in favor, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries to hold number 16. And we're ready for number 24.
Agenda item number 24Z22-11, Whitehaven, rezoning of approximately .355 acres from residential single-family 6 to commercial mixed-use CMU1 at 1110 Byfield Drive. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Okay, do we have the applicant here on number 24? Okay, if you could give us your name, address, and then we'll hear it.
Delano Smith, 3831 Lakehurst Drive, Memphis, Tennessee, 38128.
Okay, thank you. Is there any opposition? Okay, we have two people in opposition. Let's hear the case.
Hello, everyone. Teresa Shelton with the Division of Planning and Development. We have before you case Z 2022-11, rezoning of .355 acres from residential single-family 6 to commercial mixed-use 1 to build a small retail shopping center with at least 3 to 4 rental spaces. Okay, this is just an aerial view of the subject property here at the corner of Byfield and Horn Lake. This just shows the existing zoning, which is a residential area. All of this is the residential 6 area. You have a small portion of CMU 1 here and up to the north here and over to the kind of northwest area here. And this just shows you the land use, which shows the red represents commercial and all of the yellowish tone represents single family. Here's just a view of the lot off of West Byfield. And this is looking to the north, showing the lot on the corner of Byfield and Horn Lake. This is just the recorded subdivision plat from 1971, which identifies the subject property as Lot 1 right here on the corner of Byfield and Horn Lake Road. And that's just the information regarding that plat. Based on the Memphis 3.0, they did show that it was consistent with the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan. In conclusion, the applicant is requesting a rezoning of .355 acres from residential single family to commercial mixed use 1. The purpose of this request is to develop a small retail shopping center with at least 3 to 4 rental spaces. This request is not compatible with the future land use description and intent, form and location characteristics and zoning notes, as the proposed use is residential rather than commercial. However, the existing adjacent land use to the north side of the parcel is zone CMU1. The subject property is a vacant property at this time. Staff recommendation is rejection and feel that the location would be a detriment to the neighboring residential area. Staff is here for any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the staff right now? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for your presentation, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The property in question has been vacant since 2019. It was abandoned in probably about 2003 to 2004 in that area. What I want you to pay attention to is the land use map. It shows that the property to the north is commercial, and it is a tire shop, an existing tire shop that is active. We are proposing that since that property has been vacant for so long, the tire shop, the close proximity to the commercial has deterred investors from building residential in that area. And we are proposing a softer transition from that commercial to the residential. The lot is very small, so we're proposing a very small strip shop there that will provide services for the neighborhood. The curb cut, we're proposing to only have it curb cut on Horn Lake Road, and we will install we will install the buffers at the south, no, that's at the west property line where we will provide the proposed buffer, the required buffers by the zoning department. On the south side, we will install the streetscape that will provide some aesthetic to the property. Now it's been abandoned, like I said, for about since 2003. And we have had we had a meeting, and some of the concerns with the neighbors were that the noise level and traffic level may be an issue. The street has 4 lanes. We don't believe that the traffic will be an issue as long as we place our curb cut off of Horn Lake Road. The engineering and probably the code enforcement will require a photometrics design to make sure that the lighting is proper and doesn't spill over into the adjacent neighbors. And what I want you to keep in mind is that the tire shop is right next to this property, and the construction of a residential property would probably be not as not lucrative, but may not happen because of that tire shop. And I spoke with the owner of the tire shop. He has no intentions of closing his shop or tearing it down. So at this point, we really feel that the strip mall would be a smoother, softer transition from the commercial to the residential. I would like to let the owner give you some of her information as far as what their intent is.
Hi, my name is Vernita Thornton. My address is 8295 Tournament Drive, Thornton Realty, Suite 150, 111 in Memphis. To tell you a little bit about what I would like to do with the property, I'm a local resident of Memphis, born and bred here, went to school here. I went to Jeter Middle School, which is directly down the street from the property. I graduated from Fairleigh High School, University of Memphis, and other. So I am familiar with the neighborhood. My family still lives very nearby. So what I would like to do for this property, since it has been a vacant lot for so long, I thought and researched of what would be some good opportunities for this. The replacement cost to place a home on this lot would be intrusive for resale. So therefore, I continued to research and found out about the Memphis 3.0 option. Once I researched that, I saw that we could potentially fit a very small, non-intrusive strip center there with front footing facing Horn Lake, not facing the neighborhood. And in there, I would like to incorporate things that would benefit the neighborhood, such as functional fitness in one of the sections, which would include personal training, fitness, yoga, and also a senior sitting center to help caregivers have basically a day out center for people to drop in and drop out by appointment. In the second bay, I would like to incorporate healthy eating with quick serve meals that are inclusive of salads, smoothies, plates that are to go. But in addition, in that section, I would like to incorporate an internet cafe where people who are waiting for their food order could look at job boards, career placement centers, and just have a place to do a little bit of quick internet research if they were needing to have access to make an application. And then lastly, I would like the third section, if we could squeeze that there, to be an incubator site for local neighborhood businesses, where we could potentially incorporate a pop-up shop so that we could help other businesses grow and test out whether or not they could also be successful as business leaders in Memphis. We would, of course, not support or have any alcohol, beer, cigarettes, vape, CDB, or any activity or product that would be negative to the community that is surrounding the property. When we think about concessions for the area, we've thought about things like noise and barriers, lighting. And with all of that in mind, this would definitely have to be a center that's neighborhood focused, that closes at approximately 8, as to not be intrusive to the community. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of the applicant and/or representative at this time? Okay, we are ready for the opposition. If you would come forward, give us your name, address, and your statement.
Yes, my name is Constance Mickens. I live at 65 West Byfield Drive, Memphis, Tennessee, 38109. I have lived on this property off and on since the age of 6. Most of the property is still predominantly owned by the original owner. So in the process of getting this information, I was able to get 15 original residents to sign a petition. They are against this this 3-tier bay because we only have one street to go in and out for. It's a total of 2 streets. It's Byfield, it's the major street, then it's like 3 or 4 homes on Monty, and then Paxton Lane has street. But the only way to get on and off of this street is through Byfield, where the initial property will remain, the 3-car bay or 3 retail bays. Most of the community are elderly people, so they were not able to come, and the ones that was around my age, they were not able to get off. I did not get their numbers, but I did get their address and their signatures for your review. Also, we're concerned about the excessive traffic that will be coming in and off to come to this Grab service, healthy eating or whatever that's supposed to be placed there. As far as the internet, most of the people have internet now on their phones. Like I said, the community is not a lot of young people, maybe a few, because most of the occupants that lived in that area, when their parents died, they were not able to maintain the property, so they lost the property through taxes, not able to pay the taxes, or the mindset was not stable enough to continue the legacy that their parents had left for them. We do have a couple of people that are homeless in the community that were original owners of properties on Byfield and Paxton Lane. Like I said, they started getting outside inappropriate activities. Some of them got on drugs. My mom was the original, like I said, my mom took care of a lot of the homeless community on Byfield and Paxton Lane. When we get people in the community, we don't know, so we feel even more unsafe. Even though the people that's homeless are on drugs, we still have some type of comfortability with these individuals because we were raised with them. And I'm not opposed to putting a house there, and I know that Mr. Smith, the design stated, because of the tire shop. The tire shop is not as frequently visited as it used to be when I was growing up over in that area. It does close maybe around 5 or 6, but most of the time after 7, 8 o'clock, it's closed. Also, another concern was that it was going to bring the property value down as far as the housing area. I have been a vocal part of the community as far as when something is going on in the community, you can look and research on the 311, the code enforcement. My number and my mama name is one of the people that calls most often. If I were to sell my property, even the housing rate and apartment rate is astronomical at this time. Right now, I'm living in that home practically for nothing, right? But if I decide to purchase a home somewhere else, my mortgage will be $1,800 plus. So it's not beneficial for me to move at this time. I have put in over $30,000 worth of improvements in the house, even though the value is not the way people may think it is, but I like to live comfortable just like anyone else. So I have a brand new air conditioning, roof, inside, flooring, everything, redid the bathroom, and I'm working on the kitchen. It is something that I wanted to keep. It's my parents' original home, so therefore I want to keep it, and I do not want a commercial property at the top of the street. We do have property across the street, which is not kept up, and I asked them about talking to that owner. They said that owner wanted $1 million. I asked for that number. Maybe I could talk to him to let them put that grab and commercial property. It's a much bigger strip. It has much bigger parking, and I just think that'll work. And we have other areas in the community. Also off of 3rd, Holmes Road and 2 Lane. It's a big old lot next to another strip mall. It's a church. It's other places that they can put the retail shop. A home has not been put back there, but if they put a home there, I'm sure that they can get us a buyer, and also they can rent out the property, because we have about 4 or 5 renters of homes, and they get a total of $850 a month to almost $1,200. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next opposition.
Hello, good morning. My name is Teresa Conover. My address is 4829 Horn Lake Road. This is directly across the street from my home. If I look out the window, this is what I'm going to see. As Ms. Mickens stated, and I have the same concerns, the traffic, the noise, the crime. It's going to bring attention to the neighborhood. As she stated, there are several elderly people who just could not come out, some of them were told to ignore their notices that they had received. And I'm just asking that, like Ms. Mickens stated and I stated to the realty and the applicant that there is a property across the street and he does want $1 million for it. But I think if they took this concept and probably paid the $1 million for that, you can build so much more into that area. We already have 2 gas stations. We already have a convenience store down the street. When we went to the meeting, it was said that, it will possibly be a nail salon, the grab and go, as she stated, and maybe a mini clinic. The traffic is going to consume our little area at this time. People maintain their properties. Properties are clean, they're quiet. The elderly can sleep at night. I think this would be intrusive of their privacy if this goes through, and I'm asking for it to be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, do we have any questions of the opposition? Do we have any questions of the opposition or the applicants? Okay, we have 3 minutes, applicants, for your rebuttal.
Thank you, and I do appreciate and respect all of the feedback that we have received. In response to those items, we did want to bring attention to the neighborhood because in the aim of our city leaders, there's a goal to help the youth and young people have opportunities. So being a person who grew up in that neighborhood, who used to have to ride 2 buses to get to a part-time job, I think this is a great opportunity for the students who are nearby to have an opportunity for after-school work. So I do think that it could definitely be a help in that area. As it relates to the traffic flow, Horn Lake Road being on the front, I think it's 4 lanes, so that would not appear to be intrusive. The value in the neighborhood upon recent sales, looking at recent comps, is increasing. However, this particular property had gone for next to nothing because it had been abandoned, filled with trash and debris. And since taking ownership of the property, we have done everything which is well documented to keep the property clean. And if we can keep it clean and have it developed where it will add value to the community, we think it would be a plus. Let's see. I don't have any other response.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions of the applicant at this time? Yes. Okay, we are going to close the public portion of this meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Are you ready for it?
Yes, ma'am.
Move approval of agenda item number 24Z2022-11.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion?
Chair, I did have a question or two for the applicant. First of all, I love what you're trying to do, but I've got a couple concerns that maybe you can help me through. I'm not sure your site is big enough to do what you want to do, to park it, to meet the parking requirements, and you're talking 3 or 4 different bays. I don't think it's big enough to be able to adhere to the setbacks and put the parking on there. So I would suggest you look at that. And secondly, you're asking for straight zoning. And that CMU1, even though you don't want alcohol, you want the salad, no, I got it. But if we rezone that zoning runs with the land. And if you were to sell it or something were to happen to you, somebody could put a restaurant with a brew pub on there, a vet hospital, a convenience store, vehicle parts and service, all by right. And so I think to protect the neighbors, you probably ought to consider a planned development. And maybe, I don't know what the board's going to do, but I can't support this application. The spirit of what you're doing, I like, but you might want to go back and get with staff and talk about maybe looking at a planned development and see if it'll actually fit. That would be my suggestion.
And Madam Chair, I was just discussing this with Mr. Tolles. I believe if you convert this to a PD, it would be much better. I like your ideas and the concept, but Mr. Fleming has made some good points.
Anybody else?
Do we want to object to our holding it for a month until you can do the paperwork? Would that be all right?
Yes, ma'am. I would appreciate that very much.
Well, Madam Chair, I move that we hold this item for a month.
Okay, is there a second? All right, it has been moved. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor of a hold of this particular item number 24? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay? I'm not saying nay, I'm saying those opposed. Okay. Okay, yes, sir.
So one thing, I meant to recuse myself on the consent agenda item 19, please.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Okay, motion carries. I'm sorry. Motion carries for a hold. Thank you. Is there any other information? Do we need to know anything else? Mr. Ragsdale. Okay, hearing none,